On today's episode of Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM, the Darian Mensah Duke lawsuit has been settled. The quarterback may now leave Duke. We are pretty sure we know where he's headed. It's a team that played for the national title, spoiler alert. But we will find out what happens next. Plus, now that we know how Miami wants to handle the quarterback position going forward, is that the model everybody should use? Because it seems to be working for them. Also, potential changes to the targeting rule. The coordinators and officials getting together in Dallas this week to talk about rules and potential rules changes for next season. Could targeting change? Could we see like a targeting 1 and a targeting 2, like we see flagrant 1 and flagrant 2 in basketball? Is that potentially a new rule for the upcoming season? Also, we talked to former Alabama tight end Josh Cuevas about his journey from Cal Poly to Washington to Alabama, about coming back from a broken foot to play in the playoff, and about what his former coach, Kalen DeBoer, needs to do to get things rolling again at Alabama. We'll talk about it all on today's Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM. We are presented by BetMGM. We use BetMGM lines and totals, and you can join us by joining BetMGM. If you have not signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code CFB, as in college football, CFB, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how that works. Download the BetMGM app and sign on using the bonus code CFB. Deposit at least $10 to place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code CFB when you're signing up. So download the app, deposit at least $10, place your first wager, up to $1,500 if your first bet loses. Use the bonus code CFB when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary with BetMGM. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers are not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. Call 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa or 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code CFB and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM. And it wouldn't be the offseason if we weren't talking about a court case, Ari, but this court case is Dunsky. Darian Mensah and Duke have settled their dispute. Duke had sued the now former Duke quarterback in a North Carolina court last week because he was trying to enter the transfer portal. He was trying to leave. He was probably trying to go to Miami. And they said, no, it would cause us irreparable harm. Well, I think they have come up with a number, and the parties have settled according to Duke and according to Darian Mensah's agency.
If you get a number or a settlement financially, then it clearly isn't irreparable.
Exactly. It took about 5 days to get from irreparable to, well, we could probably repair it for this much.
I wonder if there's a new legal term that they can use outside of irreparable that could be more convincing.
Well, there's not a legal term they can use. They could just put a number. Like that's what we do with coaches. We talked about this yesterday when we were talking about the Clemson and Ole Miss situation, where if Clemson had already signed that player to a deal, to a rev share deal, and put a number on it that said you can buy this player out for this amount of money, it would have been a lot simpler. There wouldn't have been nearly as much complaining. And Duke could have done that too with Darian Mensah when they signed him to a contract last year. Now, remember, this was a 2-year deal. He could have said, hey, if you want to break it before the 2025 season, it's going to cost you $8 million. If you want to break it between the 25 and 26 seasons, it's going to cost you $4 million. And guess what? I think Miami would have paid that this year. I don't know that that's what Miami ended up having to pay. I don't think they ended up having to pay that much, but we don't know the terms of the settlement quite yet. two private schools. We may never know him, but my guess is they didn't have to pay that much. And I bet if it had been in the contract in writing that you would owe $4 million if you wanted to sign Darian Mensah, I bet they would have paid it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like two lines of thinking to this too, Andy, and I've actually been thinking a lot about this the last few days of like, if you anticipate getting a multi-year deal out of somebody, or you want to sign that person to a multi-year deal, and then you have a buyout or a figure in the contract that tells you, hey, if you want this player, you have to pay X number of dollars, and someone's willing to pay it, then that means they probably had a very successful year one. And like, that's pretty much all you should hope to expect, I think, when signing players in the modern era of college football until we get some rules, right? Like, I think the multi-year thing is kind of a crapshoot. And I think some of the teams will have no problem keeping them. Like, you know, like Ohio State and Jeremiah Smith, for instance, like that wasn't a big deal for them to hold on to him, but he was a high school player. The fact that Duke ended up having another team interested in their quarterback means that they had a really good year, and that year amounted into an ACC championship. And I feel like, even though the way that this ended is probably leaving a sour taste in Duke's mouth, especially considering the fact how late in the process it happened and how hard it's going to be to backfill the position, that they got what they paid for, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, they got what they paid for. And that was a large, insanely expensive deal. And I think he was the highest paid quarterback in the country this past year, or amongst them, right? So
he was amongst them. And they got what they paid for, and they don't have to pay it this year, by the way. Part of the deal is when he leaves, you don't owe him that salary anymore. So, you know, they are going to save some money on this, and although they would have, I'm sure, preferred to just pay Darian Mensah and he be their quarterback. But that is sort of life in the big city. You know, if someone had come along and, like we had recommended, someone hire their coach, Manny Diaz, we had said, hey, Michigan, Penn State, you guys that have openings, you may want to look at Manny Diaz because he's doing a hell of a job at Duke. Well, there's a clause in his contract that says if you'd like to hire him, you just pay this amount and you hire him. And we know that with Manny Diaz, it's actually happened in the past. Remember Manny Diaz initially, when he first became a head coach, took the Temple job to replace Jeff Collins. And he had been the DC at Miami under Mark Richt. And then Mark Richt retires 17 days later. And Miami's like, oh, we'd like Manny Diaz to be our coach. And they paid Temple $4 million because that's the number on the contract. So this can be done with players too.
I think that what is happening with players and their buyouts and what's in the contract and what isn't is a super fascinating discussion. But we are kind of in off-season mode, and I want to drag you into the pits of hell of this. Okay. We talked a little bit about this when Kenny Dillingham was flirting potentially with Michigan, or the thought process was that he was a candidate. Mm-hmm. And my question is going to be, you know, right now the trend for players leaving prematurely is by and large happening at smaller tier or less traditional places, right? Like when you look at the guys who are bolting to new places, who's winning? The traditional blue blood players or teams are still winning in both retention and acquisition. And I'm wondering if somebody like Manny Diaz, who wins the ACC championship with a player, becomes frustrated by his institution's lack of ability to retain players once they're very good, leads to more coaching turnover and more people doing what Lane Kiffin did. Because like, as we like sift through the world,
Ari, there's not going to be more of that. There's already that. Like, that's the state of affairs. And that's always been the state of affairs in college football. How many coaches really have stayed at a place and be like, I just love it here?
Well, the reason why I bring this up, Andy, is because one of the main principles of this season, the thing that we felt like we learned the most, what did we talk about after Indiana won the national championship on the field right as the confetti was falling? How anybody can do it, and how anybody, and I still truly believe that. We just saw it. It's impossible not to believe that after what Indiana just did. But my question is in this world of parity and thought process that anybody can do it, if once the dust settles and this system kind of settles, like the foundation settles on the house, if the game is still rigged for the big blue bloods, and if it actually is going to be in 20 years that 18 of those 20 years the traditional blue bloods win it because they're the ones who are stealing the players at the most rapid pace. And
so you mean the ones that always had the most money will continue to have the most money and continue to use the most money to win? Yeah, I think probably that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Because, you know, we have been living in, you know, Tangled Land for a while. You know, we've been watching some Disney movies at my house. It's been a pretty long weekend of snow days and no school. Hi, Livy. But like we've been living in fantasy land a little bit of like, here's the new world of college football. If you're a Mississippi State fan, go win a title by 2030. And it's like, okay. Like I don't want to overcorrect and be like, well, anybody's going to do it and this is going to happen all the time. Like I just don't know.
Yeah, no. I think Ohio State's still going to occasionally win one. But again, we're talking about Miami, and yes, Miami was ultra successful in the 80s and 90s.
We're talking about Duke,
but Miami had hit a dip. You're lumping Miami in with the Ohio States and the Alabamas. I don't think that's where they were. I think Miami was with the Tennessees. With not the Oregon now, but the Oregon of maybe 10, 15 years ago when they were trying to come up. Like, I think that's where Miami was. So Miami was not in that blue blood position, not in the Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. We can compete for national titles every year. Miami put itself in that position by being willing to spend some money.
So what's actually going to probably happen is there will be a new Cool Kids Club, but the Cool Kids Club will be 17 to 15 teams instead of 8 to 5. But we're eventually the foundation is going to settle and we're going to land on the teams who are most willing to spend. Now, I don't know. Maybe that'll be like a musical chairs. Like maybe Tennessee will be the team for 5 years and then maybe Miami will be the team for 5 years. And then we'll kind of have like a new blood every now and then. But like, until we can get into a system where a place like Duke, who is willing to shell out one of the largest salary pools or salary or contracts or salary for an individual player, like if you can't even keep that player with an attractive contract, then like if you're a Duke fan, then you're kind of right back to where we started 5 years ago, which is even when we discover a really good player, they'll either transfer or leave early and we won't be able to build anything.
No, but the difference is you'd never be able to get that person in the first place. That person would never be at your school in the first place. They got a year of Darian Mensah. They never would have gotten that before.
Yeah. And they won the ACC championship. And
Darian Mensah is not a dude they found in high school. They stole him from Tulane. Miami did to them what they did to Tulane. The timing was worse, but it was basically the same thing.
Yeah. So, but they're still a food chain.
They're still a food chain. And guess what? There will always be a food chain. Always. So that's just, that's everything. That's not just college football. That's everything in life. There's a food chain. So now the food chain changes. And I think it's changed here. Because like we just said, Miami was not in the position on the food chain that it is now. It put itself in that position in the NIL era by being willing to spend money. And that's what I want to talk to you.
But can Duke do it? Can they change where they are on the food chain if they are the ones that are paying all that money to Mensah?
Yeah, if they hire the best coach in the sport and they bring a bunch of players with them. Now, maybe Manny Diaz can do it at Duke. But Indiana won it by hiring who we now realize is the best coach in the sport. And he brought a lot of good players with him.
Yeah. And
that created some continuity. That will not happen every time. Like the next job change, let's talk about all these job changes that happened this year. Michigan State, Penn State, Florida, Auburn, Arkansas. They're not all going to work. Yeah. They're not all going to be a Kurt Signetti.
Well, it is funny because we did, and as we transition into our discussion about Miami, Andy, it is kind of interesting that we were like, anybody can do it. All you have to do is go hire the best coach in college football. Like that's easy. But you know,
it's just that Indiana didn't know they were doing it at the time, and everybody else missed it. So, but yeah, there's still a chance because we just saw it happen. But no, Duke is in an immeasurably better place now. Like Manny Diaz won the freaking ACC at Duke. Now you can say what you want about the tiebreakers and they lost 5 games. I don't care. They won the ACC at Duke. The last coach who won the ACC at Duke was Steve Spurrier. He was a pretty good coach. Duke's in a good spot right now.
Yeah.
Even if they lost Darian Mensah, Duke is in a good spot right now. And remember, they're coming off 2 good years under Manny Diaz. They had 2 good years before that under Mike Elko. I would argue that in the NIL era, Duke has put itself in a better place in the food chain. It's just not as good as where Miami's spot is.
You have a pen around you?
I don't.
Off-season episode idea, food chain. we'll
Oh,
make
the college football food chain. I like it. I like it. I'm envisioning producer River making some graphics, like the little fish eating the smaller fish, and then the bigger fish eating that, and then the bigger, and then Ohio State's still the whale.
Kind of crazy to think that like humans are at the top of the food chain, right?
Yeah, because of the brains and the building of the cities and the everything else, the weapons.
But when you think about like if like you just put a human out into the wilderness and all they had was their bare hands, they would not be at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, we're not apex predators, no. So
we're clever. we're not.
That's exactly right. Look at the big brain on Brad. That's what we got going for us. All right, let's talk Miami, because I think this is also a very interesting Miami discussion with Darian Mensah. Obviously, we predicted he's going to be there. Our Pete Nakos logged his prediction for Darian Mensah and Cooper Barkate, who is Duke's leading wide receiver this past year, to also wind up at Miami. Cooper Barkate, the one who came from Harvard the year before. This is Miami's model now. You know, Notre Dame did the rent a quarterback for a couple of years where they had Sam Hartman and then they had Riley Leonard and they got to the national championship game with Riley Leonard. But then they, despite lots of rumors about them being in the market for a transfer quarterback, they didn't take one. They went with CJ Carr, who'd been on their campus, who they recruited out of high school. There was a thought for a moment that Miami might use Emory Williams, who they'd recruited out of high school, who'd been on campus, who'd been the backup to Cam Ward and to Carson Beck. But then it became pretty clear when they were pursuing Tyus Simpson that wasn't going to happen, that they have now made the decision that philosophically they are a transfer QB program. And more specifically, a transfer QB probably kind of the last year of your college career before you head to college or before you head to the NFL, that kind of program. And I can't argue with the results the first 2 years. Like, Ari, I don't think I would. They had the best offense in college football being run by the future number one draft pick in the NFL draft, which Cam Ward would not have been anywhere near number one had he gone out the year before. And then Carson Beck was coming off elbow surgery. Doesn't sound like Georgia really wanted him back. He was going to go to the draft. And then Miami threw a bag at him, and he's like, sure, I'll come to Miami. And he takes them to the national championship game. So I cannot argue with this philosophy right now. This seems like what you probably should be doing in this day and age.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting because whatever works seems to be the right path. And like, what if Carson Beck would have got re-injured? Then their season would have been ended. And I guess that's kind of true for everybody now that you can't.
What if Arch Manning had been injured? What if CJ Carr had been injured? Now the Notre Dame fans will say Kenny Minchie was a good backup. Well, just look at what Kentucky paid him.
Well, I think the difference between now, and this isn't a Miami centric thing only, but like, I think the difference now is that if you can't retain a room, then like everybody's just kind of at the mercy of whether their quarterback. I mean, but at the same time too, it's like Ole Miss's quarterback got injured and they went almost to the final drive playing for a national championship spot. So like, I do think that like, if you go look at Miami's last two recruiting classes out of high school, they did sign a quarterback in each class. And I think that, you know, maybe it'll make it harder for them to sign the 5-star guy. But like, this will change. Like if Emory Williams could play at the level that they felt he could play, this would have changed. So part of it too is that if you keep putting yourself in a position where this is a necessity, then you find yourself in a high leverage position where you have to make a financial agreement with somebody else in order to steal their quarterback at the 11th hour in the portal window. And it's like, I don't know if that's the most comfortable place to be either. You know, like it worked out, they got him. But like, do you want to have a frantic scramble to who's going to play quarterback in mid-January every year? Is that like the best quarterback plan either? Like, I don't know. It's working and it makes sense. And Andy, I'm not trying to push back at it, but like, I wonder too, like, I guess as long as you have the most money and you're a place that's competing at a high level, you'll always be an attractive landing spot. So Miami will probably always figure out a way to make it work. But the way that they got Carson Beck and the way that they just ended up getting, you know, we're predicting that they'll get Darian Mensah. Like that wasn't the most stress-free plan running without a hitch. Like they were on a road trip and they got like 7 flat tires and they still wound up getting at their destination. And it was a beautiful destination, but like, is that a functional way to go about it every year too? Like, I don't know. There's two sides of the coin here. I think. What if Mensah didn't? What if they? I'm happy
to have the argument. I'm happy to have the argument. If Mensah didn't want to go, Williams would have probably stayed. Williams probably wouldn't be in the portal. Then you play with Emory Williams.
And that isn't the place, obviously.
Shannon Dawson's their OC. He liked Emory Williams.
Yeah.
Like the thing is, there still will be quarterbacks who come out of nowhere or who were signed out of high school, who develop and become good, and they become stars. It's still going to happen, though I think it's going to happen less frequently now because I don't know. Ari, let me ask you this. Whose situation would you rather have been in this offseason? Or would you rather be in right now? Miami situation or Tennessee situation?
Well, clearly Miami's, because Miami is going to be in a position where they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
It's not clearly Miami's, because what if Faison Brandon is awesome? Or what if George McIntyre, who redshirted at Tennessee?
I mean, you're asking me to answer the question on January 27th. I think I would rather, yeah.
This is my point. Yeah, you want the proven guy. So you have to make a philosophical choice of what do you want to be? What kind of program do you want to be? Now, you still sign quarterbacks out of high school. You still try to develop them because you still may have to play one of them. Your starter that you pull out of the portal may get hurt. So that's true. But I'm trying to ask you, if you became a head coach right now or a GM right now, what would your quarterback philosophy be? How would you handle it?
I would still try to sign the best quarterback I possibly could in every single class I had. And I still think that they're doing that. Like
how much money are you willing to spend on that?
I think, and I don't know. I think in the NFL, it's different because in the NFL, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And I don't know if that's true in college. I think you're obviously behind the eight ball if you don't have a quarterback. But I think you can still win games in college if you don't have an elite level quarterback. But I still think that I would allocate the most money to that position room because I would want to have a backup and I'd want to do what I could in the portal. Now, the hope would be that your signing of a high school player every single year would eventually amount to that player playing, and then you won't have to play the portal buyout game. And then you would have that person. And it's like, I think that the idea of who is screwed and who isn't in January is insane because I thought Tennessee could have been screwed in last March and they weren't. So and I don't think you need to have Peyton Manning back there to have an effective offense.
But what did Tennessee do? What did they do? Because it's similar to what Miami is doing now. Tennessee's not doing that for this year, but what did Tennessee do last year? They went out and got a guy who had started a bunch of games at the FBS level. And that's what Miami has done over the last 2 years. And that's what they've done now with Darian Mensah. It's sort of the NFL situation. And by the way, the NFL is being affected by this too. Like, I'm here in Mobile. I'm about to go to Senior Bowl practice. I had a scout tell me this morning. He's like, this quarterback NIL situation is a bloodbath for us, meaning the NFL, where they can't get talented quarterbacks to go pro right now. So quarterback needy teams are in pretty tough situations. Like Dante Moore going back to school. This person told me there was still a chance, even after that bad Peach Bowl, that Dante Moore could have been the number 2 pick in the draft.
And do you think that the NFL would be prepared to change their salary rules for young quarterbacks to kind of mitigate this?
I don't think that they'd have to change their CBA. So that would be a more complicated debate there. But it is interesting. And now eventually the eligibility thing will who knows? Because as we talk about Trinidad Shambles suing the NCAA for more eligibility, I don't know how this all ends. It's going to be very interesting to see how this works out because I'm fascinated to go watch Garrett Nussmeier and Sawyer Robertson and Taylon Green in these Senior Bowl practices because they can make themselves some money. Like the fact that Ty Simpson's not here. And by the way, Ty Simpson was a quarterback that Miami tried to get to come back out of the draft and come play for them. The fact that Ty Simpson's not here means that Ty Simpson's been told he's going to get drafted really high, that he doesn't need to try to climb the charts here. That is telling right there. That is telling. So basically, you know what? Miami was fighting the top of the NFL draft for Ty Simpson.
I have this theory too. As somebody who collects football cards and is very interested in trying to find the next great quarterback and being terrible at it. I wonder if this is a bloodbath for the NFL, but then will ultimately lead to less misses, like less players coming out too soon, less players who don't have a lot of reps in college. And then all of a sudden, the players that you're choosing from might not all be the number 1 overall pick in the draft or the hype machine monsters, but they might be the Brock Purdy's of the world that, threw the ball 5,000 times in college and had a million reps.
Bo
and
Nix
are actually really good.
Yeah.
Like Bo Nix. By the way, we were watching the Denver Broncos win their playoff win at the national championship game. Bo Nix played his ass off in that game.
And if he'd gotten to play in the AFC Championship game, there's a really good chance the Broncos would be in the Super Bowl.
Right now. And it's like, who would have thought that Bo Nix wasn't in the hype machine?
But Bo Nix started a million games in college, and that's what I was getting at. The NFL teams are starting to realize that starting a million games in college does allow you to have a more complete evaluation and a better idea of who's going to be good when they move up. A lot of times with these quarterbacks that you're signing out of the portal, they're moving up a level of competition as well. Either they're moving to a new conference or they're moving within the conference, but the idea is you're going to play higher leverage games with them than they played at their old school. The fact that you get Cam Ward had been a starter at Incarnate Word and a starter at Washington State. He had a lot of experience. He'd been a full-time starter in college football for 3 years when he got to Miami. Carson Beckett had been a full-time starter at an SEC school for 2 years when he got to Miami. Darian Mensah took a team to the American Championship game at Tulane. He won the ACC with the team he was on last year. 2 full years as a starter, high success rate in both those years. That feels like a more accurate measure of what you're getting. And that's what these NFL teams are realizing, but I think that's what these college teams are realizing too. And that's why if you're Miami, you're looking at that. That's why if you're Indiana and you take Josh Hoover, you've got a big body of work. You know what Josh Hoover can do. You have 2 years of Josh Hoover starting, 2+ years of Josh Hoover starting. You know exactly what you're getting.
Well,
and I think
that's a net gain for both sides, because college football is retaining more players that would have left early, which means the quality of the quarterback position at the college level is better, which then I think is probably a byproduct of the parity that we're seeing. And then the NFL only chooses from players who have no more eligibility left or have started a ton of games in college, don't have any more choices, or, in Ty Simpson's case, has felt like their college career through how much time they were in college has run its course and are ready to go pro. And you might not have as many names to choose from, and you might not have as many swings, but this is going to stop the Anthony Richardson thing from happening to the Colts, right? Freak athlete start. Isn't that kind of like the whole thing? It's well, Anthony Richardson isn't at the Senior Bowl right now. Well, Anthony Richardson might have been getting paid $2 or $3 million from Tennessee, works his kinks out. And if he has a good year at Tennessee, he's more prepared for the NFL. And if he doesn't do good at Tennessee, then he sucks and he's not getting drafted in the first round. I think that.
You're right. I mean, in a way, they are doing the NFL a favor because they're helping them evaluate these quarterbacks.
Although the Anthony Richardson thing was kind of strange.
It was very strange. And it's interesting because Ty Simpson's a 1-year starter, but that's a situation where he felt like he's ready to move on. Didn't want to play for a school that wasn't home. And I think he's going to make a lot of money. When the Senior Bowl roster came out and he wasn't on it, my thought was Ty Simpson knows he's making a lot of money here. Ty Simpson knows he's getting drafted high.
Yeah.
So,
and I also think that production, it's not just years started, it's years of production too. Anthony Richardson didn't start much, but he also wasn't very productive. And he got drafted based on physical traits, which I understand. Trust me, as somebody who falls in love with male bodies the way that I do, that sounded intentionally weird. But you know what I mean? It's the physical traits that these guys, that's what makes them 5 stars. That's what makes them do things on the field that other people can't do. And I still truly believe that Anthony Richardson might be one of the 15 most athletic human beings on the face of the earth. It doesn't make him a good quarterback. So, I don't know. I covered somebody like Anthony Richardson in college, and I still think Terrell Pryor I mean, do you know how insanely athletic that human being has to be to like be a quarterback his entire college career, go into the NFL, not do great at the quarterback position, and then be 1,000-yard receiver after never playing receiver in his entire career? Like, do you have any idea how athletic a human being has to be 1,000-yard receiver and jump over people like Randy Moss for a season? Do you remember that year when he was on the Browns? He had like 1,200 yards receiving that year.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. Truly amazing. Like, there's so few people who could pull that off. But yeah, that's how good an athlete Pryor was. But that is a situation. Like, is the NFL going to get a better version of Lenora Sellers because of the way NIL works now? Because Lenora Sellers was incentivized to stay in school for another year. Will they get a better version of Arch Manning? Because now I think Arch is not about the money. It doesn't matter. But he's going to have at least 2 years starting at Texas. He could start, he could stay for a third year and start if he wanted to. So
it's not just a better version of those players. It's more information that might stop those players from being first round busts too. Like if Lenora Sellers doesn't have a great year at South Carolina this year, or it looks a little bit more of the same that he got the first 2 years, he might not be a top 2 pick, where in 2017, he might have left into the draft this year and been a top 5 pick and then not worked out. Like, I think that like the more information the NFL has, like you said, the better. And at the same time, us as college football consumers, fans, and podcasters get to watch Lenora Sellers for another year, which is great for us. Like, I don't see any losers, and I don't feel bad for the people at the Senior Bowl.
No, the NFL guys are just complaining to complain, and I understand that they're having to deal with changes that have nothing to do with their sport, and which is something that college football has had to do when things have changed in the NFL. So that's just how it all works. But it will be fascinating going forward to watch. Do people copy the Miami model here? Because the Miami model seems to be working. Now, I guess if they don't end up back in the playoff, then we're going to say it didn't work. But I'd say they didn't make the playoff with Cam Ward, but they did have the best offense in college football. They fixed their defense. They made the national title game. I think they got a good formula.
It is the Miami model, but like Miami model isn't like a trademark to Miami. Like Indiana just won a national title doing the same exact thing.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. If Indiana does it again, like if Indiana's back there with Josh Hoover after going Curtis Rourke, Fernando Mendoza, Josh Hoover, I'm not sure how that's going to affect the market for quarterbacks out of high school. But my guess is they're suddenly going to be making less, and schools are not going to be as worried about them.
Yeah, I think that's a good, healthy thing too. I think if a 5-star prospect is making $600,000, that's a really nice paycheck for a 19-year-old. And then if you are demanded
unproven,
to produce for a check, that keeps people locked in, that encourages production, that encourages not slacking off, not driving a Bentley to practice before you've ever taken a snap. All these things, like you said at the beginning of this whole thing, the market would set itself. That doesn't mean that the ocean waters wouldn't get choppy for a little bit, or that things wouldn't go haywire. But I think as more information comes through, the Miami model, the Indiana model, any model that of any team that wants to take a quarterback that is proven over somebody who isn't, that is obviously going to reflect in the money that people are willing to pay high school players. If you're paying buyouts, especially, who knows what Miami's going to have to pay in this Mensah settlement, but that's less money that they have to throw the bag at some random high school quarterback. And you know what? That means that quarterbacks are enticed to maybe stick around and go to places where they actually get to play. I don't know. I think it's healthy. I think this is good. So
I'm just interested to see how it goes. Let's talk about something else, a potential change that is a little less naturally occurring and more something that probably was bound to happen at some point. But I'm glad this discussion is going on. So there is a group of coordinators of officials. So the different leagues each have their own coordinator of officials. That group of people, those people are meeting in Irving, Texas this week about potential rule changes for the 2026 season. One of the things they're talking about is targeting. And our friend Ross Dellinger at Yahoo wrote a story about this on Tuesday, and I thought it was really interesting. Steve Shaw, who is former SEC director of officials, now the national director of officials, told Ross, hey, this needs to be a conversation about this situation, because you remember going to the national title game, Mario Cristobal was talking about how unfair he believed it was that Xavier Lucas had to miss the first half of the national title game. Remember, he was called for targeting in the second half of the Fiesta Bowl against Ole Miss. And that was one of those that was I don't think it was a cut and dried targeting call. I think that was one I seem to remember quite a bit of debate online about whether that was targeting or not.
Why don't you just call it what it is? It was bullshit. like that's what it was.
I mean, I honestly couldn't remember. Honestly, Ari, I couldn't remember how iffy that call was. Like I wasn't sure because there were a few and there was another one in one of the playoff games where it looked like textbook targeting. I think it was the Alabama Oklahoma game we covered. We're like textbook targeting. They're like, nope, not targeting. And we had the what there is targeting
a targeting call in the first half of the Miami Ole Miss game that was not upheld when the rules expert came onto the television and said it was going to be targeting. It was the same game.
Yeah.
And it looked worse than the one that Lucas got ejected for. So again, I don't know. And I can't recall whether it actually was targeting or not. But I think that everybody who watches the sport, me, you, and everyone listening agrees that the rule is dysfunctional and needs to be reformed in some way.
Yeah. And so what they are going to talk about, now this doesn't mean they're going to change anything yet, but they're at least going to discuss this, is the potential of having multiple levels of targeting. So like a flagrant 1 and a flagrant 2 in basketball. If you don't watch a lot of NBA or college basketball, flagrant 1 is it's a bad foul, but you probably didn't mean to hurt anybody. Flagrant 2 is you are trying to hurt somebody and you're out of the game. And I think in targeting, like the idea behind the targeting rule, and it has worked, was to change the behavior of players, keep them from headhunting during games. And I think it, by and large, has kept headhunting down. Like you watch old games, there are hits to the head that would never pass muster in today's game. There are hits to the head that you're like, oh my God, this is brutal. They don't do that anymore. Or at least they're trying not to. The players are really trying not to. I would like to see, if you're going to eject somebody, it better be for flagrant headhunting. That's the only reason you need to eject somebody. I don't think somebody needs to be ejected from a game because they were trying to make a tackle. The ball carrier changed their level trying to duck the tackle, and it ends up in a head-to-head hit where it looks like the tackler's launching at him. I don't think that's something you should be ejected for. You're not trying deliberately to hurt anybody in that situation. You are just trying to make a tackle, and the other person is moving in a way that is natural to the sport.
And Andy, I think too, and I don't know, you have a better memory than me, so save me from myself if I'm off here. But if there are 100 targeting calls in college football, I would say 99% of them, 99 out of those 100, are not malicious hits.
I would agree with that.
I don't think that there's a problem in college football where people are trying to play dirty or spearhead somebody. And I think that, in the NBA, and I watch some NBA, you watch NBA, the officials do a pretty good job of determining what's malicious and what isn't. Now, the stakes are much lower in the NBA. I know people do get hurt in the NBA, but in football, I understand the reason for how harsh the penalty is because they're trying to protect the players. I think that we need to remind people that the reason why it feels unfair is because they don't want anybody to get paralyzed. And I don't want anybody to get paralyzed.
Worked. And it has worked. It is, these types of hits. I'm telling you now, go back and watch a game from the early 90s or the late 90s, and they are just clobbering each other. They are going right at people's heads. I remember when I was a kid watching the NFL, the NFL would put out this video called Crunch Course every year where it was just headshot after headshot after headshot. We celebrated those things.
There was a play in one of the national championship games that you covered, Florida. Florida had a defensive.
I believe that was Ahmad Black. No, it was Major Wright hitting,
and it was
hitting one of the Oklahoma receivers. Yeah,
it was an Oklahoma player, and the guy went up for the ball. The receiver went up for the ball, and Major Wright put the crown of his helmet into the guy's chin strap, and it's that guy could have been seriously hurt. And I don't think that I just don't think there's very many hits like that anymore. And I feel like the other thing that people resent about this though too is that football is a physical game. Most of us in our age range grew up watching football during a time where it was a lawless murder affair. But we don't want people to be penalized for making a big hit either. That's the other thing too.
Yeah, a good legal hit where you hit the person in the chest. Hard hits should not be against the rules. A good hard hit and they're going to be good hard hits where the other person gets the wind knocked out of them and they have a hard time getting up. That's going to happen. But it's the headshots that they're trying to legislate out. And I think they have The rule has worked as intended, but the part they didn't intend was these judgment calls where somebody's getting tossed from a game and it changes the game. And you and I covered a game together a few years ago. It was the Fiesta Bowl between Ohio State and Clemson after the 2019 season, where Shaun Wade got thrown out of the game. It changed the complexion of the game completely. It changed how Ohio State had to play defense. It changed who Clemson was attacking offensively, and it turned that game around. And it was one of those where if you watched it live, you were like, that's not targeting. And then I actually remember talking to Steve Shaw because he was at the game. I talked to him after the game down by the locker rooms, and he said, I understand why you'd say that, but here is why it was targeting. This reason. He gave me all the indicators, and I went back and watched the play, and I was like, shit, he's right. It is, they had to call it because it was kind of textbook, even though if you watched it live, you're like, there's no way that's targeting. Mm-hmm. And it changed the him getting thrown out changed the complexion of the game. So if you have, say, a targeting one that is just a 15-yard penalty, and you could do it like a flagrant one, where if you get a second flagrant one, you're out of the game. So if you have a targeting one, and that's your only targeting call, you're not getting thrown out. You are at risk of being thrown out if you get another one. But I think that would probably be okay. Like if that hit doesn't get him thrown out of the game, and Ohio State doesn't have to change his entire defense around, and Clemson has to play them straight up, I wonder what happens in that game.
That was only the second worst call of that game. Remember the other one?
It was a Trevor Lawrence run, or was it a sack? Or I try to remember. Trevor Lawrence had the ball, right? No,
Trevor Lawrence threw it to, I believe it was Justin Ross in the flat, and Ross caught it, and there was a fumble and a strip, and Ohio State picked it up and returned it for a touchdown, and they called it an
I don't believe Ross was playing in that game. I think it was Travis Etienne. But yes,
I don't remember who it was. It was a Clemson receiver who had the ball, and it took 3 steps, and it was like and then it would have. Ohio State was 2 ref calls away from winning the game. And I think that might be, something that keeps Ohio State fans up at night. But like the targeting thing was the thing that stinks about it.
That's the one where I really started to turn on the idea of the person being thrown out, because by that point, the penalty had been around a while. You'd already seen the change in behavior. You'd already seen a lot of the headshots being kind of ruled out of the game. And so I was like, maybe it's time to evolve it. And I think they're getting there. I think the Xavier Lucas one might have been a tipping point, because it was a big discussion at National Title Game Media Day. Like, hey, what? This guy can't play in the first half?
Yeah.
Because of that call? Like, seriously?
And Andy, I think the NBA refs do a pretty good job of deciphering those things. And I think that the college football refs would do a very good job of, is this a malicious dirty
I think
play?
they would. I do know from talking to people, they would prefer not to have to. Like, they don't think they want to diagnose intent, but that just may become part of the job.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I'm glad they're talking about this. I think this is an important discussion, needs to be had, and maybe clear up some of the rules about targeting, because targeting is one of the hardest things to explain. And the networks bring on the rules analyst every time, and it feels like it's still very hard to explain, because there's a couple different situations. There's defenseless ball carrier, and then there's a ball carrier who can defend themselves, and the rules are different for those two situations. So maybe they need to streamline the rule a little bit, make it a little easier for everyone to understand, because I think that's another reason people feel like it's not that it's rigged or anything, but that there's too much for them to have to parse. Though I guess if they're having to parse intent, that's yet another thing they're going to have to do.
But I think what would happen would be most people would not get thrown out of the game unless it's egregiously obvious, because there are certain ones that are egregiously obvious. But like we said, 99 out of 100 people aren't trying to be malicious, which then would save us from having unreasonable ejections. Because it's one thing to give up a 15-yard penalty in a bad point in the game. Like the Shaun Wade instance, like I remember that was a drive before halftime. I think they ended up scoring a touchdown on, and they probably would have scored had Shaun Wade not been ejected from the game. It was the fact that Shaun Wade wasn't able to play in the entire second half, and it ruined Ohio State's entire defensive plan. You think about the penalty of what the hit was, even if it was targeting, and what Ohio State, the consequence they had to pay because of it. it doesn't equate. So I think that there should be some reform, but I do also think that there is a debate that should be had. As much as I hate targeting and think that sometimes it's stupid and players are wrongfully ejected, that we need to continue to penalize it at a point where it discourages people from putting themselves in danger, because the heart of the rule and the reason from the rule, is a rare thing in college football. They're actually doing it for the best of the players. Like they are actually trying to protect the players.
Perhaps you do like, and this would be something you have to keep track of. And I'm not sure this is something they could do, but you could have a situation where, I mentioned that you could have a targeting one, and if you get a second one in the same game, you're out. How about if you get a second one in the same game, you're out 3 games? Like you don't miss anything for the first one, but you get another one, you're out 3 games or something like that. Or you say your first targeting, you keep playing. Your second targeting, you're ejected from the game. Second targeting of the season. Your third targeting penalty of the season, you are suspended for 5 games or something like that. Like that, I think would still act as a deterrent.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm very interested to see what the reform looks like, but I'm happy they're at least acknowledging it's not working. Like that's the first step in fixing something. So
it's funny because people get on officials, and I think they have the hardest job in almost any field. I think sports officials have the toughest job because it's completely thankless. Nobody notices you unless you get something wrong. And having gotten to know some of these guys over the years, they care so deeply about this stuff.
They do.
They think about it a lot, and they want it to make sense to the fan at home. They want it to make sense. Because the only reason they're doing this is they want to have a fair game. And I'm glad they're talking about it. I'm very interested to see what they come up with. All right, Ari, let's move to another pressing subject. We got a little news on Monday night that Alabama is expected to hire Adrian Klemm as its new offensive line coach. And so Adrian Klemm, coming from USC, longtime offensive line coach. He's been a lot of different places. I thought he probably did some of his best work when he was with Jim Mora at UCLA. But Adrian Klemm is a very respected O-line coach. He's worked in the NFL. Alabama needs work in that department. They need to block better. They could not run the ball this year. I don't think they were really protecting Ty Simpson very well by the end of the season. And so Alabama making that change at offensive line coach. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Offensive line coach, I think, is one of those deals that is kind of, mirrors the same thing that happens to the players, which is if you're very good, your football cards don't sell for a ton and not a lot of people appreciate you, but it's the difference between winning and losing. So, I think that staff moves are amongst the most important things that head coaches will do and that will ultimately determine whether they're successful or not. And, frankly speaking, Andy, you cannot have an Alabama football season where your team is that bad at running the ball, especially in short yardage situations, and you're going to keep your job. Like this is a move that had to be made. And I do think that Alabama would have been much, much better as a team and maybe even a national championship contender, like a real one, if they were able to move the ball on the ground and had more proficient offensive line play. So it's an interesting move to track, and it's certainly something that Alabama had to do.
Yeah, and so remember when DeBoer was at Washington, they had a really good offensive line in 2023 when they went to the national title game. That they were a great blocking team. Remember that Pac-12 championship game against Oregon, where they basically put the game away by ramming the ball down Oregon's throat, and their line was awesome. So Scott Huff was the offensive line coach on that team. He did not go with, or he was originally going to go with Kalen DeBoer, but then when Ryan Grubb got the Seahawks offensive coordinator job, Scott Huff went with Ryan Grubb. Now, they fired Ryan Grubb at the Seahawks after that first year, and Grubb ended up back with DeBoer at Alabama. But Scott Huff stayed in the NFL. He's currently the Rams tight ends coach. And so that's why if you wonder, okay, how come it didn't look like it looked at Washington? That's why it didn't look like it looked at Washington, because that guy wasn't there. And so now the hope is that Adrian Klemm will be able to bring that back. And so this is one way to get into an interview I did at the Senior Bowl with a former Alabama player. Now, Josh Cuevas, not an Alabama offensive lineman, but he was a tight end who was integral in their blocking schemes. In fact, if you listen to our show the week of the Alabama-Oklahoma game, we talked about how different things are, or at least things seem to be for Alabama when Josh Cuevas played and when he didn't. He missed 3 games at the end of the season because he had a broken foot. You're going to hear him talk about coming back from that. But this is a situation where it's got to get better. And you'll hear Josh Cuevas at the end of this interview. He'll admit that their blocking needs to get better. And there were things that were going wrong at the end of this season that they need to get buttoned up going forward if Alabama wants to be where Alabama wants to be. So let's talk to Josh Cuevas, former Alabama tight end from the Senior Bowl. Here with Alabama tight end Josh Cuevas. And thinking about where you came from. So you're from LA, you start out at Cal Poly.
Yeah.
Like, could you have ever imagined ending your career in the Rose Bowl playing for Alabama?
Definitely a dream come true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was planning on staying at Cal Poly my entire 4 years. And then the opportunity arose where I had the opportunity to go and play at a different level. And but I was just given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Took the most out of it. So
Well, and so you went from Cal Poly to Washington, and you wind up on that Washington team that went to the national title game. So what was that like walking into a team that was pretty much, kind of fully formed and really far along in its development?
yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a little bit intimidating, but having that reassurance from the coaching staff and just kind of like being comfortable within what I could bring to the table, it definitely wasn't much of a challenge. And especially with the guys that Washington had. I mean, they were coming off I think an 11-2 season.
Yeah, they were really good the year before too. Yeah.
11-2, so they kind of had that foundation of what they were going to be and what they were coming back for. A lot of older guys stayed for a national championship run. And I mean, they were handling it like pros.
Yeah.
I mean, they took in new guys like myself, like we were already a part of the family for years.
And so you learn the offense there. Coach DeBoer goes to Alabama, and then you end up going to Alabama and become a very important part of the offense. So we did a segment on the show. I remember coming out of the SEC Championship game talking about how not having you was such a big deal. How much did you value, your blocking? And because I know everybody wants to catch passes, but we were watching and it was clear the run game was different with and without you.
Yeah, that was something in the offseason that I definitely had to take pride in if I wanted to get to this next step, if I wanted to get to this next level. And the coaching staff had sat down with me like postseason of 2024. And they're like, hey, these are the things you need to work on. We think you're a natural pass catcher. We think you run routes really well. It's just trying to be that true Y every down tight end.
Yeah.
Like 11 personnel stuff, just kind of like being out there every down. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to put in the work. And that was something I took pride in the offseason, trying to get into, and I ended up getting better.
Well, it's easier said than done. Like when you're talking about the true, it's a true Y. It sounds very finessey, but you're playing against monsters.
Absolutely.
In the SEC.
Yeah.
Like when you are an attached tight end, you are dealing with future NFL edge rushers who are absolute freaking monsters. Who was the toughest guy you had to block all year?
Man, I really don't know if he's here. I don't think he's here. I know a few of his teammates are, but Mason R. Thomas from Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
He had gotten a hold of me on a few plays in 2024 when we played him in Norman for that first time, and I had never forgot about it. And honestly, props to him, man. He's a great player. He's an absolute beast. And then kind of coming back in 2025, that first time we played him, like he didn't play that game just because
he's hurt. Yeah.
But then kind of playing him in the first round of the playoff game, that's when we kind of had our match.
So you had a broken foot.
I did.
And you came back from a broken foot to play in the playoff.
Pretty crazy.
What I mean, did you think when they tell you your foot's broken, you're done?
Absolutely. I mean, I had to sit down with the athletic trainers. It's funny. The athletic trainer had called me after my CT scan because we had to drive like an hour to Birmingham from Tuscaloosa and then all the way back. And they had gotten the CT scan results before I did. And then they texted me. They're like, hey, come in. We need to talk to you. And when I kind of went in there, I obviously had a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Because like every step that I took, it felt like somebody was taking a fork and just stabbing it in my foot, spinning it. And it was bad. But I went in there. All the coaches were in there, like the entire offensive staff, some defensive staff in there.
It's like a funeral.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was. And I was like, wow, my season might be over. And so I walked in there. They gave me the whole rundown of everything. And they're like, yeah, we don't need surgery, but this is not looking like promising, but I mean, there was tears shed for sure because I felt like I had more left in me in the tank, and definitely for the state of Alabama and for that program.
Jeff Allen, their trainer, miracle worker, right?
Miracle worker. I mean, the way he uses the resources around him. I mean, whether it's the modalities of like rehab or even the people, it's just insane to me. But I mean, he's a true master of his craft, and that's something he's been doing for years.
So you get back for that Oklahoma game. You'd had to sit out the SEC Championship, which I'm sure was miserable for you because it was a tough game for everybody. Yeah. But what was that Oklahoma game like, going down 17, coming back and winning?
Yeah, I was so hurt from missing 3 weeks and not being there for my guys. And obviously that SEC Championship game hurt the most just because we had made it that far. And then just to kind of put up the performance that we did, it was just kind of like, man, we could have done so much better. And I mean, everybody was feeling that way. But nobody was kind of like down about it because we knew it wasn't the end. We knew we had a playoff run in us. And so coming back for that first playoff game and coming off of my injury, I had a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I had thought my season was over and I'd missed 3 games already.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to just let it loose and just kind of do what I need to do. And we're going to get this win and kind of getting that payback for Oklahoma to be from beating us in the regular season.
How much pain were you in?
Honestly, I wasn't in much pain after that, just because, I mean, all the bone stem stuff that I was doing, all the rehab and all the strengthening of the muscles around my foot, like it carried me through that game. So,
yeah.
I mean, I wasn't in much pain at all, which is, I mean, insane. But
right.
You're saying Jeff Allen, miracle worker.
That's amazing.
I'm telling you.
Speaking of guys who are very good at their jobs, Kalen DeBoer, obviously you like him a lot. You played for him at Washington. You went to play for him at Alabama. What does he need to do to get Alabama bounced back from what happened in the Rose Bowl and get them back on track for next season?
You know, I think we have a whole bunch of younger guys kind of going in. And, I mean, I can tell you right now, like, our communication just kind of up front, whether it be O-line, tight ends, just kind of stuff like that. I mean, like, just kind of like protection checks and stuff from the quarterback, that can get tremendously better. I think we had a little bit of trouble handling pressure and blitzes and stuff from defenses all year.
Yep.
So I think like the communication part absolutely just needs to get better. But, you know, we have a whole bunch of younger guys, but Coach DeBoer is so good at buying into those younger guys and taking them under his wing and just kind of like sitting them down every single time, and with support staff around him, just kind of telling everybody, hey, this is what you need to work on, this and that. And I mean, he's coached national championship teams. So, I mean, he's capable of doing it and doing it at a high level. And I never doubt for a second that he would be able to do it at Bama.
Appreciate it, Josh. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
So, Ari, Josh Cuevas said it right there. The communication needs to get better in the pass blocking. Obviously, you know, this is not to throw anybody else under the bus, and he was being very diplomatic about it. It wasn't like we couldn't see it on TV. We saw what was happening. Alabama needs to be better up front if Kalen DeBoer wants to get Alabama back to competing for national championships, because it's so interesting that Alabama was a quarterfinalist in this playoff. They felt like the farthest away from the national championship of any of the 8 teams in the quarterfinals.
Which is crazy because they won a game. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you know, the Alabama, if you go look at their portal haul this year, they didn't make a lot of splashes. And I think if you do like a winners and losers tab of of transfer portal teams, like you'll probably find Alabama under a lot of the loser lists because they didn't get any of the big time sexy names.
Yeah, they tried to get Cam Coleman, didn't get him. They had Hollywood Smothers committed, and he flipped to Texas. So, but you were saying,
got a lot of offense and defensive linemen. So, you know, those I think are a little bit harder to see or to celebrate. People can't analyze offensive line and defensive line play. I think offensive line play is harder. The only way people like really know how to do it is, did that person give up a lot of sacks or were they good? Like, I don't know, but I think that they addressed the things that they needed to address the most, and they returned some really good players. So, you know, I think that going into this offseason, Alabama is probably going to be in the top 15, top 20 range, not the top 5 range. But if they have the right offensive line coach and the right additions in the portal to kind of shore those things up, they should be a pretty good team next year.
Yeah, and if you look at the guys they got, a lot of them are coming from other SEC schools. This is not necessarily them going out and getting guys that were super experienced. This is getting guys that were younger, that maybe haven't played very much, that they hope, I think, that they can develop into really good players. We will see, because that's, the philosophy of going and getting experienced offensive line in the transfer portal, that really doesn't exist, because there just aren't really usually enough to revamp an offensive line in an offseason. And, there's the occasional Jordan Seaton who's out there, but you're not going to get multiple Jordan Seatons in your transfer portal class in a year. That's just not, it's not really a possibility.
Yeah, but they brought in 4 guys.
Yeah. Yep.
So 4 guys is a lot.
Yeah.
And that shows that they have an emphasis on that. And then, of course, whatever they sign our high school class, they had a few offensive tackles in their 2026 class too. The hope is that they'll be much better up front next year.
Yeah, we shall see. That has to get better, or what you saw in the SEC championship game, what you saw against Indiana, that's going to keep happening. And I think that's the fear with Alabama, is that they're not used to seeing this. These fans are not used to seeing their team ever get pushed around. And it did get pushed around in the Florida State game, and it got pushed around in the SEC championship game against Georgia, and it very much got pushed around in the Rose Bowl by Indiana. So the Boar's got to get that fixed. He won't, unfortunately, have Josh Cuevas to help him with it. And that guy was really good in the couple of years he got to play at Alabama. But he's off to the NFL now, and now it'll be up to Kalen DeBoer to find the next great tight end, the next great offensive tackles, the next great offensive guards, because that is what is expected at the University of Alabama. No pressure. And what does Don Draper always say, Ari?
That's what the money's for.
That's exactly right. Kalen DeBoer fending off all the interest from other schools. We'll see. We still haven't found out if that ended in a raise for Kalen DeBoer.
I think it did, and I think we're going to find out like in the spring at some point. Yeah, I
would assume, but it's probably not from an optical standpoint, the way they lost the Rose Bowl. I'm not sure that's something you can just drop on everybody right now. Yeah. So
maybe it'll be a March 17th Friday news dump or something. I don't know. But it's a critical year, and we have an entire offseason to talk about it. We will. We
will definitely talk quite a bit of Alabama this offseason, as well as all the other big brands in college football, but also the ones that, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. I started putting out interview requests today, Ari, for the next few months. But we're going to start getting these coaches on, talking to coaches and players. The first request I sent out is a guy who we've talked about how excited we are. He actually came on the show before you joined. He when he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, he came on the show. But Will Stein, the Kentucky coach, I put in a request for him. Hoping to have him on the next few weeks. That's true. It didn't. Yeah. It didn't. I mean, we didn't have cool things like Megaboard Wednesday, which is what we're going to have tomorrow. Our guy Charles Bediako, the Alabama basketball player who played in the G League, he's playing again against Missouri tonight. He played against Tennessee on Saturday, and Tennessee won. So the judge extended the temporary restraining orders, allowing him to play. So he gets to play Missouri tonight, and he gets to play Florida this weekend. It's just fun times all around.
Hey, maybe they'll extend it all the way past March Madness. Who knows?
Ari, we're going to have to get into some hoops, because I don't know if you've looked at the mega board these last few days. It is it's getting spicy, especially our friends at Kentucky Sports Radio at KSR. They're fired up about their basketball situation right now. They're not quite ready to revolt, but they're not happy. And we're going to have to talk a little bit of these hoop situations going forward, because a lot of the blue bloods, they're in situations now that they're probably not used to being in. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Charles Bediako situation. We'll talk about all that, and of course, more college football on Wednesday. Megaboard Wednesday We'll talk to you then.
All right. You did good.